take a tour around what I'm doing to kind of prepare for self-sufficiency, but also this stuff just really makes me happy. They're talking about all these food shortages coming up and economic downturn, possibly even a global depression. So this is my strawberry plant, and that's a hanging one, but I'm going to move that to its own strawberry patch. This on the front porch is a bay leaf tree. Bay leaves are what you put in. I love them in stew. So I'm growing my own. It'll be able to sit out here in the full sun during the summertime, and then I'll bring it in to winter it. Just this year I planted a bunch of fruit trees. So I have 2 apples. This is a patio peach, which is a dwarf. 2 peaches, pear, 2 apples. And these apples are not dwarfs, but I want them to be. So what you can do, from my understanding, is that I can just keep pruning the tops off so that they'll stay the size I want them to. A lot of fruit trees will need a cross pollinator, so make sure you read carefully. Some do not. So that is that. I've grown vegetable gardens most of my adult life, so I'm not new to it, but I've never tried to do it on this kind of scale. It was just kind of hobby. So here I did these this year. Those trellises, I wish I made them, but they're from another project that didn't work out, so I just moved them over here. And you see, this is just fencing wire that I put up to kind of keep my dogs from trampling everything. And these were easy. You buy them, you mush them in the ground. This wire you buy as a roll and just roll it around. These garden beds were super easy, and I love how they turned out. And it was, you could have done it yourself, but it was easy with 2 people. And all you're doing for 8-foot boards that I had, Lowe's went ahead and they'll cut them for you. So I had them cut them in half. And you just, let me see if I can find the screws. You just screw them in, top and bottom. And I used galvanized, I think 3.5-inch self-screwing. So I didn't have to pre-drill a hole. And I do have a screwdriver. And ladies, if you've never used a drill, which also works as a screwdriver and will even go in reverse and take screws back out, you need to get you one. They're wonderful and so useful. So that was super easy. We put these together, 2 of us, probably in about, I want to say, an hour. The harder part was the dirt. So you can buy bags of dirt, like Miracle Grow 2 cubic feet yesterday was $15 a bag. So that would get very, very expensive. And probably I would need like 4 of those just for this. But the cheaper way, I have a pickup truck. You can go to the mulch and dirt place and they'll fill up my truck. They filled my truck up with half compost, half topsoil for like $40, and that did mostly fill these up. And some of them I didn't fill up all the way because I will, over time, you want to amend your soil, and that means adding nutrients back into it. So I am also composting, and I'll show you how I do that very simply. And also with potatoes, like here I'm growing cabbage and potatoes, and these I'm going to move the cabbages, and I'll show you where in a second. But those little plants coming up are potatoes, and potatoes are super easy to plant. And you can plant them directly in the ground, but they're really hard to harvest. And my ground, I hate digging so much, especially hard soil. So I love the raised garden beds. As potatoes are growing, you pile more dirt on them as the tubers, or which are another word for the potatoes, start surfacing. You don't want them to hit sunlight because that's what turns it green and makes it toxic. And then you keep piling dirt. So I'll need to pile more dirt. So this will be full by the end of summer. Over here I have onions, and you can plant them as seeds, although they would take forever. Or you can buy like bags of sets, and what the sets are, they're just little mini onions, and you plant them and they become big onions. So we'll be planting some sort of beans here that will grow up that trellis. And let's see, over here I didn't have a trellis for this garden, so I just wired 3 stakes together, and beans will climb up that. Over here we have a strawberry patch, and this was a galvanized tub, which was pretty cheap on Amazon, and that was super easy to put together and very fast. This is just a roll of chicken wire, which is a good idea if you're going to do this sort of thing to just have on hand, because it's very useful for different things. So that's going to be my strawberry patch, and we'll talk more in a later video about strawberries. There's kind of a obviously is where my water meter is. It's where my air conditioner is. I just realized yesterday it was a lot of wasted space. So I'm growing amaranth. Leaves are edible. They get super tall, like 10 feet tall. And I'm doing sunflowers in the other half. And I have heard that they do well together. But amaranth, you can eat the leaves. We'll use them in stir fries. And they make a gluten-free grain, which you can toast. You can feed it to your chickens or birds. Doing sunflowers in the other half. And I have heard that they do well together. But amaranth, you can eat the leaves. People use them in stir fries, and they make a gluten-free grain, which you can toast. You can feed it to your chickens or birds. You can eat it yourself. You can make it, I think, into flour. So I'm excited to just like mess around with that and just try it this year. So I have to not block that meter. And over here, so I'm going to transplant my cabbages over here because they're low lying and I don't think they'll be in the way at all of anybody trying to read that. So this hot mess over here, those bags of mulch are going to go away. And normally I would get a truckload of mulch, but it's much, much cheaper to do it that way. It's just so much work at one time, and this way I can do it little by little. That straw there is for something called the Ruth Stout method, and I'm going to do a potato harvest over there. So what I'm going to do once I get my mulch off of there, I'm going to move that straw. Like what I could have done if I wanted to wait until next year, I would just leave that straw pile there over winter and it would break down, and then come early spring I would just part it apart, plop my potato seeds, and seed potatoes are just little potatoes just like the onion sets, and you can we'll talk more about that later, but you just plop them on top of the dirt, and then you put the straw back over and just make sure it stays watered, and you should have really good potato harvest. Over here, this garden bed came with a house, which is really nice, but it's on sort of a the back side of the house, and it gets sunlight but not a whole lot. So over there I'm growing spinach, which spinach you can plant in the cool weather, and I think this one's a heat tolerant variety, but I could be wrong. And then over here on the other half I'm growing lettuce. Lettuce grows really, really fast, and you see some of the little babies sprouting up. And so that'll be good. So lettuce is a really good, of course, to eat. And I like to plant them really close together and just come by and chop the tops off and then come back after, and they'll just regrow. I don't pull up whole heads. Here I have a rain barrel, and I love this rain barrel. And this is really cool. And this is, I hope some of this just sparks ideas for you, what you can add to your yard. So this is something I bought on Amazon. And rather than, a lot of rain barrels don't have this piece, so you route everything into the rain barrel. But then the problem is once the rain barrel is full and your spout is turned off, and see this has this really nice spout, and it rained last night so I have plenty of water, and it's really good for watering the plants. So they would route this whole thing over to your rain barrel, but then where does the water go when it's all being routed here? So it needs a place to go. So I really like this because it'll divert until it's full, until your rain barrel's full, and then the rest will go down its normal route. So that's really cool. I really need to pressure wash my house. Okay, so over here I added this year, and this is something I never would have thought, but this has everything to do with the downturn economy. And don't judge my mold on my side of my house. I am getting ready to power wash soon. So this is going to be a quail hutch, and I'm going to add, I've got 3 dogs and a cat, so I'm going to add a kennel around the outside for extra protection. And I'm not sure, but I may put a net top on it and let them out for extra room in there, and even like fly a little bit in that kennel. But I'll have to decide how safe it is for them. I like the double protection against the dogs, because the dogs of course will eat them. Over here is a compost tumbler. Now you have to be compost. It's just so crazy, like a $15 for a bag of good dirt when you are throwing away all your own waste. So what goes in here, and we're gonna look, it's kind of gross, but all kinds of, you can see some of it's broken down already, and we got all our table scrap, newspapers that don't have the color ink because the color ink is toxic, cardboard. And the way you compost is so simple. 5 parts carbon to 1 part of nitrogen. Carbon is brown stuff, that's straw, sawdust, ashes, dried leaves, newspaper, shredded paper, cardboard. Nitrogen, or green stuff, is plants, kitchen waste, grass clippings, and that sort of thing. You don't need a compost tumbler to compost. You just need to make a pile and turn it every once in a while. Add it those components that we talked about and keep it moist. Eggshells are wonderful. Plants love them. Oops. So as far as my quail go, back to the quail hutch, I've got fertilized eggs that I order. I'm getting jumbo quail, and I think I'm probably just using them for their eggs, and they will lay eggs like as soon as 5 weeks after of age, which is amazing. And then they live for 2 to 3 years. The other side of my yard, this is all shade, and I have this like big wooded area, which is kind of cool. So let me go back to that. So I have a wood burning grill, or I'm sorry, a charcoal grill. And so what I've started this year, and I'll let you know how that goes, is I've got all these branches, dead branches and stuff back in this foliage. And so I've started just like collecting twigs and stuff in the yard and pile them next to my charcoal grill. and fire starter lint from your dryer tucked into an empty toilet paper or paper towel roll makes a great fire starter. So, and then you add the twigs, and then you can add logs, and then all that wood burnt ash, and you can grill right on that. And then that wood burnt ash is great for your garden. It's called potash, and it's got a lot of potassium, and plants love it. So just another way of like not throwing stuff away and using stuff and getting back to basics. This weird thing is just something I'm going to try this year. It's like an old gallon jug, and I put twine on it, and I'm going to see what, like, if I can grow in there. And then look inside. There's a caterpillar. These have got to go. They're going to eat my food. So over here, this empty bucket's a piece of plastic in it right now, but that's going to have sweet potato like that. I drilled holes in the bottom, and I'm going to put sweet potatoes because I want a little bit of sweet potatoes this year. But I've got all kinds of stuff. See, I planted stuff, and this was my friend's idea of just cutting open a bag of soil, of garden soil, and planting directly in them. And I used it as a border to keep weeds out. I don't like the look of it, so I probably won't do this next year, but I just wanted to try it. I love to experiment. So the reason I have all these pots, it's not the best use of space, but because of this hill that's behind it, I don't know if you probably can't really tell that there is a hill behind it, but that's a big hill with all that foliage. And then it like this part of the yard goes into like kind of a swamp, and it congregates and swamps up right in this garden section. Even a raised garden bed, because they don't have bottoms, it'd still flood, I think. So this was my best solution, and I think it's a pretty good one. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it works. And over here you saw that those are all my I'm going to call it my pot garden, but that sounds a little shady, but you know what I mean. So this weird rack that is sort of an eyesore, right? This was a bread rack that my neighbor was throwing away that I asked if I could have it because it was just going to garbage, but it's this really solid rack from a store. And I took one of the shelves off and I attached it to the wood, and these are just landscape ties. And I had green beans growing up it last year, but this year I'm going to use it because these are really sturdy racks. And I'm going to grow these butternut squash. Are going to get so big, and they're going to have these huge heavy squashes. And so the squashes, the vines will grow all around this, and the squashes will set up here to support them. And then come the summertime, you cure them so they'll keep over the winter time, and you have to cure them in the sun, which means set them out in the sun. And we'll talk more about that in another video. So this is going to, it looks ugly now, it's going to look so beautiful, and they're such a great purpose. I'm so excited about that. So then over here I have cantaloupe growing, and you see that chain link fence, which I have always hated, but now I love because they make these great trellises that I don't have to buy. See, I grew more in those potting soil bags, and I'm using that as a barrier. And then over here, this hot mess. Saved my son cardboard box, all of them that I've thrown away over the years that I could have been composting. I didn't know that I could have been using as ground, like rather than landscape fabric. So I need a little bit more, but I'm going to cover that all with dirt. I'm going to plant, I needed room for spaghetti squash, so I added this in. This whole section of the yard, it's on the back of the house, so it doesn't get as much sunlight as this part, but there are plants that will support that. So what I'm going to do is go get some more landscape ties, and I'm going to line this with landscape ties to keep it tidy and only keep a pathway. And then I'm going to put like 3 bales of straw down and let that break down over the winter. And so for next year, just come out and plant in. So that's going to be really nice. So back to this side of the yard. So I measured out, so you see how this is. I measured out, so for next year I can do 5 more. I'm going to do 5 more of the wood raised garden beds because they were so cheap, guys. And then like I'll have them year after year. I'm hoping they'll last me 10 years. I mean, it's really heavy duty wood. So I have room for 5 more, which I'll do next year. And I will landscape fabric down the middle of between these 2 beds, and just to have a walkway, and I won't even have to mow back here. Like, how amazing is that? And this might be ugly and an eyesore to everybody else, but to me it's pure beauty. I just love it. I love being out here. I mean, God created us in the Garden of Eden, and I think most of us have that in our blood.
Can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.